The old Bible sat on a velvet cloth beneath a hanging lamp. Its cover was cracked. Its brass clasps were tarnished green. The pages weren't white. They were dark cream, thick, almost cloth-like, and something about it looked wrong. Not fake, older than old, because this Bible had books many modern readers never expect to see. Its family record pages were filled with births, deaths, marriages, stretching back 2 centuries. And tucked between familiar scripture was a forgotten section once printed in millions of Bibles, then quietly abandoned by many publishers. An antique dealer, who had spent decades handling religious books, once explained it simply. People think the Bible changed overnight. It didn't. But before 1850, the Bible looked very different. And once you understand why, you begin to realize that what most people imagine as the traditional Bible is often far newer than they think. Part 1. The Dealer's Shelf. The dealer's shop didn't specialize in religion. It specialized in paper. Old paper. Maps. Letters. Civil War documents. Victorian photographs. And shelves of books no modern bookstore would ever stock. Among them sat family Bibles weighing nearly 20 pounds. Not pocket-sized. Not minimalist. These were furniture. Objects designed to occupy the center of a household. The dealer liked to watch customers react. Modern readers expected Bibles to be compact, standardized, familiar. But 19th century visitors often stared at these older editions in confusion, because pre-1850 Bibles frequently looked less like modern study editions and more like family archives. Large engraved title pages, decorative borders, steel engravings, illustrated biblical scenes, genealogy sections, marital records, sometimes funeral notices tucked inside. A Bible wasn't only scripture. It was a legal memory vault before widespread civil registration systems. Many families recorded births, marriages, and deaths inside their Bible. For historians and genealogists today, those pages can be priceless. In some families, the family Bible preserved records that governments never did. And that alone surprises modern audiences, because the older Bible wasn't always treated primarily as a personal devotional book. Often, it was a household institution. Part 2. The physical Bible people forgot. Today, mass printing creates uniformity. But older Bibles reflected their printing era, before industrial publishing transformed book production. Bible printing was expensive, labor-intensive, and deeply physical. Paper mattered. Bindings mattered. Ink quality mattered. Margins mattered. Many pre-1850 editions used rag paper made partly from cotton or linen fibers. Unlike modern wood pulp paper, rag paper ages differently. It survives. That's why some 200-year-old Bibles remain surprisingly readable, while certain 20th century books crumble into acidic dust. The dealer loved demonstrating this. He'd place a modern paperback beside an 1810 Bible. One flexed cheaply. The other felt dense, resilient, engineered to outlive its owner. And then came the covers. Leather, calfskin, Morocco leather, heavy boards. Sometimes metal clasps designed to keep thick pages from warping. These weren't disposable books. They were heirlooms, made to be inherited, which explains why families commissioned presentation editions for weddings, births, anniversaries, or clergy gifts. A Bible might remain in one household for generations, and with every generation, its pages collected fingerprints, notes, pressed flowers, locks of hair, mourning ribbons. Objects modern publishers rarely imagine belonging inside Scripture, but historically, they did. Then the dealer would open to a section many visitors didn't expect, the Apocrypha, and suddenly the conversation changed. Because many people assume the Bible's table of contents has always been universally fixed. History says otherwise. For centuries, many Christian Bibles included books modern readers in some Protestant traditions no longer encounter inside ordinary editions. Books like Tobit, Judith, Wisdom of Solomon, 1 and 2 Maccabees. These texts held different levels of authority across Christian traditions. In the Catholic tradition, several belonged to the deuterocanonical books. Many Protestant communities later excluded them from the main canon. But here's what surprises people. Early Protestant Bibles often still printed them. Even the famous King James Bible of 1611 included the Apocrypha in a separate section. That fact alone shocks many modern readers, not because the books suddenly disappeared, but because publishing traditions evolved. The dealer had seen customers accuse old Bibles of being altered. Sometimes they believed the extra books proved corruption. Other times they assumed something had been secretly removed from modern editions. History is more complicated. Religious traditions debated canon for centuries. Different communities preserved different arrangements. And by the 19th century, economic, theological, and publishing pressures began reshaping what ordinary Bible buyers received. One major turning point involved Bible societies. Organizations devoted to inexpensive scripture distribution grew rapidly during the 19th century. Printing costs mattered. Doctrinal priorities mattered. Arguments over funding editions containing the Apocrypha intensified. Gradually, many Protestant mass-market publishers moved away from routinely printing those sections. Not everywhere, not instantly, but noticeably. And by the late 19th century, many English-speaking Protestant readers increasingly encountered editions without them. The disappearance wasn't a single secret event. It was a publishing transition unfolding across decades. Modern readers often imagine a timeless, identical Bible sitting unchanged across history. But older shelves tell another story. Before standardized publishing dominance, Bible editions varied more visibly. The Geneva Bible carried famous study notes. The King James Version became enormously influential. Margins differed. Typography differed. Introductions differed. Illustrations differed. Printers competed. Religious audiences differed. Regional traditions differed. Owning a Bible in 17th or 18th century life did not necessarily mean owning what a modern bookstore would recognize. Some editions contained commentary. Some emphasized cross-references. Some highlighted doctrinal teaching. Some were luxury objects. Others were simplified household editions. The dealer once joked, "People ask me which version is the original." That question usually collapses within 5 minutes of handling real antique Bibles. Because physical history complicates simplified assumptions, not to undermine Scripture, but to remind us that books live inside cultures. And cultures print books differently. Part 5, what happened around 1850. So, why use 1850 as a dividing line? Because the 19th century transformed publishing. Industrialization accelerated printing. Steam-powered presses increased production. Paper manufacturing changed. Distribution expanded. Literacy rose. Publishing became increasingly commercialized. Books that once required substantial craftsmanship could now be produced more efficiently. That changed the Bible too. Cheaper editions expanded access. Smaller formats multiplied. Portable personal ownership grew. And gradually, the Bible many people recognize today became increasingly common. Cleaner layouts, simpler production, mass affordability, standardized formatting. The household monument began sharing space with a personal devotional copy. This was not necessarily a loss. For millions, cheaper printing meant unprecedented access to Scripture. But something did change. The older Bible's physical identity, oversized, genealogical, ornamental, deeply domestic, slowly receded. The dealer described it like this. The Bible stopped being only the family archive. It became increasingly individualized. And in that transition, something historical became invisible. The internet loves dramatic claims. Hidden books removed. Secret edits. Lost original Bible. Reality rarely cooperates with clickbait. Historical Bible development is not simple enough for conspiracy slogans. Canon formation unfolded across centuries. Translation history is layered. Publishing history matters. Denominations differ. Language traditions differ. And physical books tell stories modern arguments often ignore. The dealer believed antique Bibles taught humility. Because once you handle enough real historical editions, certainty softens. You realize the Bible's story isn't only theological. It is also material. Printed, bound, distributed, inherited, argued over, translated, annotated, loved, worn out, reprinted again, and again, and again. Part 7, The Last Family Bible. Near the back of the dealer's collection sat one enormous 19th century Bible. Its spine leaned sideways from age. Inside, the genealogy pages told a quieter story than the theological debates. Births recorded in fading ink, then war deaths, infant deaths, wedding entries, different handwriting, different generations. Some careful, some hurried. One page carried a pressed flower brown with time. Another contained a funeral card. This Bible had outlived nearly everyone who touched it. And suddenly, the discussion about typography, canon, or publishing felt deeply human. Because for the families who owned these books, the Bible wasn't merely a doctrinal artifact. It was memory storage. A witness sitting on the shelf through births, illnesses, migrations, marriages, and grief. That older physical culture matters. Not because modern Bibles are somehow illegitimate. Not because history proves scandal. But because objects reveal how people actually lived with sacred texts. Ending before 1850, the Bible often looked different. Bigger, heavier, more decorative, more domestic. Sometimes containing sections many modern readers no longer expect. Sometimes functioning as a legal record book as much as a devotional companion. And according to one dealer who spent decades handling antique editions, the surprise wasn't that old Bibles differed. The surprise was how few people realized they ever had. Because history has a way of quietly simplifying itself, until an old leather volume opens beneath a dim lamp and reminds us that even the most familiar books once belonged to a world that looked very different from our own.